Kara Vex stared at her reflection in the mirror, her emerald eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. The weight of her impending 30th birthday hung heavy on her shoulders, a ticking time bomb that threatened to destroy everything she had worked so hard to achieve. As a Zethian female, Kara knew all too well the cruel fate that awaited her if she failed to conceive a child before reaching the age of 30. It was a biological imperative, a twisted quirk of evolution that ensured the survival of her species at the cost of countless lives. She had always been a career-driven woman, rising through the ranks of the Galactic Patrol with a fierce dedication that left little room for personal relationships. But now, with mere days left until her birthday, Kara realized the price of her ambition. "I can't let it end like this," she whispered, her fingers clenching the edge of the sink. "I won't." Kara had a plan, a desperate gamble that hinged on finding a mate willing to help her conceive. She knew it was a long shot, but she had no choice. Time was running out, and she refused to go gentle into that good night. With a final glance at her reflection, Kara straightened her uniform and strode out of her quarters, her boots clicking against the metal floor of the starship Orion's Fury. She made her way to the bridge, where Commander Jax Ironheart stood at the helm, his rugged features illuminated by the glow of this viewscreen. "Commander," Kara greeted, her voice crisp and professional. "I need to speak with you privately." Jax turned, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers. "Of course, Lieutenant. My ready room. 5 minutes." Kara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Jax was a human, a species known for their adaptability and resourcefulness. If anyone could help her, it was him. She made her way to the ready room, her mind racing with the words she would say. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, she felt a flicker of doubt. The door slid open, revealing Jax seated behind his desk, his expression curious. "What can I do for you, Lieutenant?" Kara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Commander, I need your help with a personal matter. It's a matter of life and death." Jax leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Go on." "I'm Zethian, sir, and if I don't conceive a child before my 30th birthday next week, I'll die." The words hung in the air, heavy and stark. Jax's eyes widened, his mouth falling open in shock. "I know it sounds crazy," Kara continued, her voice trembling, "but it's a biological imperative for my species. I've been so focused on my career, I didn't think about the consequences. And now, I'm out of time." Jax leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "That's a lot to take in, Lieutenant. I'm not sure how I can help you." Kara felt her heart sink, but she refused to give up. "I need a mate, sir. Someone willing to help me conceive. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't have any other options." Jax was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft. "I'm sorry, Kara. I can't be that person for you. It's too much, too fast. We barely know each other." Kara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had known this was a possibility, but hearing the words still stung. "I understand, sir. Thank you for listening." She turned to leave, her shoulders slumped in defeat, but before she could reach the door, Jax called out to her. "Wait, Kara. I may not be able to help you myself, but I think I know someone who can." Kara turned, her heart leaping with hope. "Who?" Jax smiled, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "His name is Rake Torin. He's a mercenary, a bit of a rogue, but he's got a heart of gold, and he owes me a favor." Kara felt a flicker of apprehension, but she pushed it aside. If Jax trusted this Reich, then she would too. "Where can I find him?" Jax tapped a few commands into his console, bringing up a star map. "He's currently on Fafuria Prime, a trading post on the edge of the Outer Rim. I'll send you the coordinates." Kara nodded, a newfound determination filling her. "Thank you, Commander. I won't forget this." Jax stood, his hand outstretched. "Good luck, Lieutenant, and be careful. The Outer Rim can be a dangerous place." Kara shook his hand, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I can handle myself, sir, but thank you for the concern." With a final nod, Kara left the ready room, her steps quickening as she made her way to the hangar bay. She had a mission now, a purpose that went beyond her duty to the patrol. As she climbed into her sleek black fighter, Kara felt a surge of adrenaline. She had faced countless dangers in her career, but none quite like this. But she was ready to fight for her life, ready to do whatever it took to survive. The stars blurred into streaks of light as Kara entered hyperspace, her destination locked in. HFY Prime awaited, and with it, the hope of salvation. But even as she hurtled through the void, Kara knew that her journey was just beginning. The Outer Rim was a lawless place, a haven for the galaxy's most dangerous criminals and outcasts. And somewhere among them, Torin waited, a man who held the key to her survival. Kara just hoped that he would be willing to help her, that he would understand the desperate nature of her plight. For she was a warrior, a fighter to the core, and she would not go down without a fight, not when her very existence hung in the balance. As the stars streaked by, Kara closed her eyes, her mind drifting to the future she hoped to have. A future where she was alive, where she had a child to call her own. It was a future worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. And fight she would until her last breath, until the very fabric of the universe itself unraveled around her. For she was Zethian, a proud daughter of Zeth Prime, and the fire of her people burned brightly within her, a flame that would not be extinguished, not by time, not by fate, not by anything in the vast expanse of the galaxy. The neon-lit streets of HFY Prime pulsed with a frenetic energy, a cacophony of sound and color that assaulted Kara's senses as she navigated the crowded thoroughfares. The trading post was a melting pot of species from across the galaxy, a place where anything could be bought or sold for the right price. Kara kept her hand on the hilt of her blaster, her eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of trouble. She had been to places like this before, but never with so much at stake. She made her way to the Black Nebula, a seedy bar on the outskirts of the spaceport. According to Jax's intel, this was where she would find Torin, the man who could be her salvation. As she stepped through the door, Kara was hit by a wall of sound and smoke. The bar was packed with a motley assortment of patrons, from grizzled spacers to sleek corporate types. Kara wove her way through the crowd, her eyes searching for the man she sought. And then she saw him, sitting alone at a table in the back, nursing a glass of amber liquid. He was tall and lean, with a shock of silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His eyes, a piercing blue, met hers across the room, and Kara felt a shiver run down her spine. She approached his table, her heart pounding in her chest. Torin? He nodded, his expression guarded. Who's asking? My name is Kara Vex. I'm a lieutenant with the Galactic Patrol. Commander Jax Ironheart sent me. At the mention of Jax's name, Rake's eyes narrowed. What does the good commander want with me? Kara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. He said you owe him a favor, and I need your help. Rake leaned back in his chair, his gaze appraising. What kind of help? I'm Zethian, and if I don't conceive a child before my 30th birthday next week, I'll die. Rake's eyebrows shot up, his expression a mix of surprise and disbelief. You want me to father your child? Kara nodded, her cheeks flushing. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't have any other options. Jax said you were a man of honor, someone who could be trusted. Rake was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Finally he spoke, his voice low. I'm not sure I'm the right man for the job, sweetheart. I'm a mercenary, not a family man. Kara felt her heart sink, but she refused to give up. I'm not asking for a commitment, just your help in conceiving. After that, you can walk away, no strings attached. Rake's eyes met hers, and Kara saw a flicker of something in their depths. Compassion, perhaps, or understanding. All right, he said at last, and I'll help you, but on one condition. Kara's heart leaped with hope. Name it. I have a job to finish first, a high-stakes heist on a Kexorgan stronghold. I could use your skills and your patrol connections. Help me pull it off, and I'll give you what you need. Kara hesitated, her mind racing. A heist on a Kexorgan stronghold was no small feat. The insectoid warriors were known for their brutality and their advanced technology. But what choice did she have? I'm in, she said, her voice steady. When do we start? Rake grinned, a flash of white teeth in the dim light of the bar. Right now. Follow me. He led her out of the bar and into the night, the neon signs casting a kaleidoscope of colors across his chiseled features. Kara followed, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. They made their way to a small, nondescript ship on the outskirts of the spaceport. Reich keyed in a code, and the hatch slid open with a hiss. "Welcome aboard the Shadowhawk," he said, gesturing for Kara to enter. "She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts." Kara stepped inside, her eyes widening at the array of weapons and technology that lined the walls. This was no ordinary ship, but a vessel built for war. "Impressive," she said, running her fingers along the edge of a plasma cannon. "You certainly come prepared." Reich chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that sent shivers down Kara's spine. "In my line of work, you have to be. The KX don't mess around." He led her to the cockpit, where a hollow map of the KX stronghold hovered in the air. Kara studied it, her mind already working on a plan of attack. "The KX have a weakness," she said, pointing to a small, unguarded vent on the map. "Their exoskeletons are vulnerable to high-frequency sound waves. If we can get a sonic disruptor inside the stronghold, we can take them out without firing a shot." Reich nodded, his eyes gleaming with approval. "I like the way you think, sweetheart. But getting inside won't be easy. The KX have a state-of-the-art security system, with motion sensors and heat detectors." Kara smiled, a fierce, predatory grin. "Leave that to me. I have a few tricks up my sleeve." And so, with a plan in place and a newfound partnership forged, Kara and Reich set out on their mission. The stakes were high and the odds were stacked against them. But Kara was a warrior, a fighter to the core. And with Reich by her side, she felt invincible, ready to take on the galaxy itself. As the Shadowhawk lifted off, the stars blurring into streaks of light, Kara felt a flicker of hope. Hope for her future, hope for the child she longed to have, and hope for something more, something she had never dared to dream of before. A partnership, a connection, a bond that went beyond the physical. For in Reich Torin, Kara had found more than just a means to an end. She had found a kindred spirit, a man who understood the fire that burned within her. And together they would face the dangers ahead, united in their quest for survival, for justice, and for something far more precious than either of them had ever known. The Korgan stronghold loomed before them, a towering monolith of black metal and pulsing green light. Kara felt a shiver run down her spine as she gazed upon it, the weight of their mission pressing down on her like a physical force. Beside her, Reich was a coiled spring of energy. His eyes narrowed in concentration as he piloted the Shadowhawk through the asteroid field that surrounded the stronghold. His hands moved over the controls with a fluid grace, guiding the ship with a skill born of years of experience. "We're coming up on the entry point," he said, his voice low and focused. "Get ready." Kara nodded, her hand tightening on the grip of her blaster. She had faced danger before, but never like this. Never with so much at stake. The Shadowhawk slipped through a narrow gap in the stronghold's defenses, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to the KX sensors. Reich guided the ship to a small, unguarded airlock, the hatch sliding open with a hiss of hydraulics. "Let's move," he said, unholstering his own weapon. "We don't have much time." Together they crept through the darkened corridors of the stronghold, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Kara's heart pounded in her chest, her senses heightened to a razor's edge. And then, without warning, all hell broke loose. A group of KX warriors emerged from the shadows, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the dim light. They opened fire, a hail of plasma bolts sizzling through the air. Kara reacted on instinct, diving for cover behind a bulkhead. She returned fire, her blaster spitting bolts of searing energy at the advancing KX. Beside her, Reich was a blur of motion, his own weapon blazing as he cut down the insectoid warriors with ruthless efficiency. His face was a mask of concentration, his eyes hard and focused. "We need to keep moving," he shouted over the din of battle. "The control room is just ahead." Kara nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She summoned her courage and leaped from cover, charging forward with a fierce battle cry. Together they fought their way through the KX defenses, their weapons flashing in the darkness. Kara felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins, a fierce joy that came from facing death and emerging victorious. At last they reached the control room, the door sliding open to reveal a vast chamber filled with pulsing consoles and flickering holoscreens. In the center of the room, a massive KX warrior stood guard, his exoskeleton bristling with weapons, "I'll handle this, Idulwam," Reich said, his voice grim. "Get to the console and upload the virus." Kara hesitated, her gaze flickering between Rick and the Korgan warrior. She didn't want to leave him, didn't want to abandon him to face the creature alone. But she knew he was right. The mission came first, and they were running out of time. With a final, anguished glance, Kara sprinted for the console, her fingers flying over the keys as she uploaded the virus that would disable the stronghold's defenses. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of battle, the clash of metal on metal as Reich fought the Korgan warrior. And then, with a final, triumphant cry, it was over, the virus uploaded, the defenses crumbling, and the Korgan warrior lying dead at Rick's feet. Kara turned, her heart in her throat, and saw Rick standing there, his armor scorched and battered, but his eyes alive with triumph. "We did it," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "The stronghold is ours." Kara felt a surge of emotion, a mix of relief and gratitude, and something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides and threw her arms around Reich, holding him tight. For a moment, they stood there, 2 warriors united in victory, their hearts pounding in sync, and then slowly Reich pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Kara," he said, his voice soft, But before he could finish, a new sound filled the air, a high-pitched whine that set Kara's teeth on edge. She spun, her eyes widening in horror as she saw a new wave of Korgan warriors pouring into the room, their weapons raised. "We have to go," she said, her voice urgent. "Now!" Reich nodded, his face grim. Together they raced for the door, their weapons blazing as they cut a path through the advancing Korgans. They burst out of the stronghold and into the asteroid field beyond, the Shadowhawk waiting for them like a beacon of hope. They leaped aboard, the hatch slamming shut behind them as Reich gunned the engines and sent the ship rocketing into the void. As the stronghold receded behind them, Kara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, the adrenaline of battle fading away. She slumped into the co-pilot's seat, her eyes drifting shut. But even as she slipped into unconsciousness, she felt a warm hand on her shoulder, a gentle touch that spoke of comfort and care. "Rest now," Reich said, his voice soft. "You've earned it." And so, with the stars streaking by outside the viewport and the man she had come to trust by her side, Kara let herself drift off into a dreamless sleep, secure in the knowledge that, for now at least, they were safe. But even as she slept, she knew that their journey was far from over. The Korgans would not take this defeat lightly, and there were still battles to be fought, still dangers to be faced. And then there was the matter of her own fate, the ticking clock that hung over her head like a sword of Damocles. She had come to Rick for help, for a chance to save her own life. But now, as she lay there in the quiet of the Shadowhawk's cockpit, Kara realized that her feelings for the mercenary had grown into something more, something deeper and more profound than mere gratitude or friendship. She had come to care for him, to trust him with her life and her heart. And as the stars streaked by outside the viewport, Kara knew that, whatever the future held, she would face it by Rick's side, united in their quest for survival and for something more precious than either of them had ever known. Kara awoke to the gentle hum of the Shadowhawk's engines, the soft vibration of the ship lulling her back to wakefulness. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim light of the cockpit, and saw Reich sitting beside her, his gaze fixed on the stars outside the viewport. "How long was I out?" she asked, her voice rough with sleep. Reich glanced over at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "A few hours. You needed the rest." Kara nodded, stretching her arms above her head. She felt better, the exhaustion of the mission fading away as she moved. "Where are we headed?" she asked. Leaning forward to study the nav computer. "A little place I know," Reich said, his voice cryptic. "Somewhere we can lay low for a while, regroup, and plan our next move." Kara raised an eyebrow, curious. "And where might that be?" Reich grinned, a flash of white teeth in the darkness. "You'll see." Hours later, the Shadowhawk dropped out of hyperspace, the stars resolving into pinpricks of light against the inky black of space. Before them, a small, unassuming planet hung in the void, its surface a mottled mix of green and blue. "Welcome to Menhir," Reich said, guiding the ship into the planet's atmosphere. "My home away from home." As they descended, Kara saw a vast expanse of rolling hills and verdant forests, the landscape dotted with small, picturesque villages. It was a far cry from the neon-lit streets of Fifuria Prime or the cold, sterile corridors of the Galactic Patrol's starships. Reich set the Shadowhawk down on a small, secluded landing pad, the ship settling onto its landing gear with a gentle thump. He powered down the engines and turned to Kara, his expression serious. "Before we go any further," he said, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you." Kara felt a flicker of apprehension, but she nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I've been thinking about your situation," Reich said, his gaze intense. "About what you asked me to do." Kara's heart skipped a beat, her mouth suddenly dry. "And?" Reich took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'll do it. I'll help you conceive a child." Kara felt a rush of emotion, a mix of relief and gratitude, and something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. She opened her mouth to speak, but Reich held up a hand, stopping her. "But I have a condition," he said, his voice firm. "I want to be a part of the child's life. I want to be there for you, for both of you." Kara's eyes widened, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never expected this, never dared to hope for something so precious. "Reich," she said, her voice trembling, "I don't know what to say." He smiled, a soft, gentle smile that made her heart ache. "Say yes." And so, with tears in her eyes and a heart full of hope, Kara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." They disembarked from the Shadowhawk, hand in hand, and made their way to a small, cozy cottage nestled among the trees. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm golden glow over the room. Reich led Kara to the bedroom, his touch gentle and reverent. And there, in the soft light of the fire, they came together, their bodies moving in perfect sync, their hearts beating as one. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated bliss, a moment of connection and intimacy that Kara had never known before. And as she lay there in Reich's arms, her body sated and her heart full, she knew that she had found something precious, something worth fighting for. The days passed in a blur of happiness and contentment as Kara and Reich explored the beauty of men here in each other. They hiked through the forests, swam in the crystal-clear lakes, and made love under the stars, their passion and affection growing with each passing moment. But even as they reveled in their newfound love, Kara knew that their time together was finite. Her birthday was fast approaching, and with it, the deadline that hung over her head like a verdict. She tried not to think about it, tried to lose herself in the joy of the present moment. But as the days ticked by, the fear and uncertainty began to creep back in, a cold, insidious whisper in the back of her mind. And then on the morning of her 30th birthday, Kara woke to a strange, unfamiliar sensation in her belly. She sat up, her hand pressed to her stomach, and felt a flicker of movement, a tiny, precious spark of life. "Reich," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I think it worked. I think I'm pregnant." Rick's eyes widened, his face splitting into a grin of pure, unadulterated joy. He gathered her into his arms, holding her close, his laughter mingling with her tears of relief. "We did it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We're going to be parents." And in that moment, as the sun rose over the hills of men here and the future stretched out before them like a shining path, Kara knew that she had found something worth living for, something worth fighting for. She had found love, and with it, the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as she lay there in Reich's arms, their child growing inside her, Kara knew that she was ready for whatever the universe had in store. For she was a warrior, a fighter to the core. And with Reich by her side and their child in her belly, she knew that she could face anything, overcome anything. And so, with hearts full of love and eyes bright with hope, Kara and Reich set out to face the future together, ready to take on the galaxy and all its wonders, one day at a time. 1 year later, the soft cries of their infant son stirred Kara from her slumber. She rolled over, her hand reaching instinctively for Reich, only to find his side of the bed empty. She sat up, a smile tugging at her lips as she heard his deep, soothing voice coming from the nursery. Kara padded softly into the room, leaning against the doorframe as she watched Reich cradling their son, Menhir, named after the planet where they had found solace and love. The sight of her husband, bare-chested and sleep-tousled, never failed to send a thrill through her body. "Hey there, little man," Reich murmured, his finger caught in Menhir's tiny grip. "You're up early, trying to catch the sunrise like your old man?" Kara chuckled softly, drawing Rex's attention. His eyes met hers, a playful glint dancing in their depths. "Well, look who's finally awake," he teased, his voice low and seductive. "I thought I might have to send a search party." Kara sauntered over to him, her hips swaying with each step. "You know I need my beauty sleep," she purred, running a hand along his muscular arm, "especially after the news we got last night." Rick's grin widened, his free hands snaking around her waist and pulling her close. "The Kelg's organs, scattered to the winds," he murmured, his lips brushing against her ear. "Defeated by the combined forces of the Galactic Patrol and the Resistance. It's like a weight has been lifted." Kara hummed in agreement, her fingers tracing the hard planes of his chest. "It's a new beginning," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. "For the galaxy and for us." Reich's hand slid lower, his touch igniting a fire in her veins. "Speaking of new beginnings," he said, his voice a low, suggestive rumble, "what do you say we give Menhir a little brother or sister to play with?" Kara's eyes widened, a surprised laugh escaping her lips. "Reich!" she exclaimed, swatting his chest playfully. "Menhir's barely 3 months old!" Reich grinned, unrepentant. "What can I say?" he quipped, his eyes dancing with mischief. "I'm a man of action, and right now I'm thinking we should take advantage of this rare moment of peace and quiet." He punctuated his words with a meaningful glance towards their bed, his intentions clear. Kara felt a rush of heat, her body responding to his suggestion with a throb of desire. "You're insatiable," she murmured, her lips curving into a coy smile. "But I suppose we should strike while the iron is hot." Reich's grin turned wolfish, his hands sliding down to cup her rear. "Oh, I'll show you hot," he growled, his voice a promise of pleasure to come. Kara laughed, low and throaty, as Reich set Menhir gently back in his crib. He turned to her, his eyes smoldering with desire, and swept her into his arms, carrying her back to their bed. As they tumbled onto the sheets, their bodies intertwined, Kara marveled at the twists and turns of fate that had brought them to this moment. She had once faced the prospect of death, of a life unlived and a future unrealized. But now, with Reich by her side and their son sleeping peacefully in the next room, Kara knew that she had everything she had ever wanted. A family, a love that burned brighter than the stars, and a future full of endless possibilities. And as Rick's lips claimed hers, his hands igniting fires on her skin, Kara surrendered to the passion and the promise of their love, ready to face whatever the future held together.